It's balancing time, boys and girls. Welcome back to Rebalancing Pokemon, Project Pocket Monster. It's Kanto. It is last week, or whenever the heck the last video went up, I did everything from Venusaur all the way to Alolan Raticate. And if you're new here, basically I'm going through all of the Pokemon and I'm tweaking them to be viable in the current meta, in a competitive meta. That's something that I want to specify as well. This is under a few assumptions. We're not changing any of the type chart things. We're not changing the effects of abilities. We're not changing base power or PP of moves. Everything has to fit thematically, so my reference in my previous description was giving Charizard Storm Drain. Like, yeah, that would make Charizard better, but it doesn't make any sense, so we're not going to do it. Everything we do has to make sense, it has to be cohesive, and it's designed to carve out a bigger niche for all of these Pokemon that have previously not been so very good. And they're not good due to power creep over generations and generations of new and improved Pokemon with better abilities, better stats, etc., etc. This is assuming meta without Mega Evolution, a meta without Z-moves, and a meta without Gigantamaxing or Dynamaxing. So all of the cyclical stuff that Game Freak hasn't been so concrete on keeping in their games, we're not going to talk about. It's the monsters, baby. It's all about the monsters. Fearow. If you are new and you haven't seen anything in the series before, there's a link in the description to the first part of the video. I'll probably make a playlist, that kind of thing. So I guess we're just going to get started here. Fearow is, come on, it's Fearow. It's one of the most overlooked and worst normal flying types in the entire game, and it needs to be buffed a lot. It's got a base stat total of 442, which, while that's not as bad as, say, Butterfree or Eradicate or something like that, it definitely needs a little bit of work. It's got relatively useless abilities in Keen Eye and Sniper, and it suffers from something I like to call Gen 1 syndrome. Now, what is Gen 1 syndrome? Well, after looking at every single Gen 1 Pokemon, Gen 1 syndrome equates to bad stats, bad abilities, a really pretty decent move pool. Like, some Pokemon get moves that you're like, oh my god, why does Exeggutor get Flamethrower? And overall, some of them are bland. You know, Fearow is a pretty generic, normal flying type. It was when Pokemon first started, so, you can't really fault them for it. But we need to change up Fearow a whole bunch. So, first thing we're going to do, most notable thing we're going to do, is we're going to change out that generic, normal flying artifact of Game Freak's past. They loved making things normal flying. I thought that was really dumb, and it gave flying types and made them immune to Ghost and fighting neutral, which I thought didn't help it at all. I'm going to get rid of normal flying for just strict flying type. Fearow is a flying type now. Get used to it. It just is. Pidgeot's still normal flying. We're not getting rid of normal flyings entirely. I just don't think that Fearow is by any means normal. As far as its stats go, I would like to boost its HP by 15, which is actually a pretty hefty amount, to 80. I want to boost its attack by 9 to make it base 99. And then I want to boost its speed by 11, making it base 111 speed, which is relatively fast. So now the thing you might be noticing, you see Keen Eye for Intimidate. I think this makes sense. You're looking at the ability section. I know you are. I'll get there. Fearow's a pretty big bird. He is arguably one of the scarier looking birds of all of the birds in Pokemon's history. And with large wingspan, really kind of jagged edges, very Generation 1 sharp design. Actual more like animalistic, I think Intimidate makes sense, and I think it actually works very solidly as, Fearow could function as a pivot. It could intimidate something. It would take less damage from stuff. It boosts its defense by, as a result of the Intimidate. Sniper I'm going to keep, because why not? And I'm going to give Fearow, and this is the biggest change we're going to make, is Gale Wings. Now, Gale Wings is a Generation 6 ability. It was Talonflame's signature ability, and actually it still is Talonflame's signature ability. But I don't care about signature abilities, because I think they're dumb. I think that good abilities should not be for specific new Pokemon. Generation 7 saw that. Really, really good abilities given to Pokemon that can't utilize them as well as, other Pokemon might be able to. I look at Minior with shields down. I look at Golisopod with emergency exit. I look at Palisand with water compaction. Same idea. Talonflame, Gale Wings. I don't want it to be exclusive anymore. Give it to Fearow. It won't be broken at all. Fearow has a bigger attack stat, but a smaller speed. Now, Gale Wings only works at full HP. It's not nearly as good as it once used to be. It used to work all the time, so Fearow can come in. It can Gale Wings if it has booties, if there's no hazards up or anything. It can Gale Wings Brave Bird. It can Gale Wings Roost, Defog, anything like that. Now, as far as Fearow's moves go, though, because we've already specified that Fearow should sort of function as a pivot and as more of a support mon revenge killer in the same essence as Talonflame, although it doesn't have the fire typing, so arguably it's a little worse, and it's also not as fast, but a little bit stronger. I want to give Fearow access to Stab Acrobatics, and if you don't know what Stab is, it's same type attack bonus. I'm going to put it on the screen right there. And some coverage moves, because it is a Generation 1 Pokemon. It already has access to U-Turn, it gets Drill Run, it gets Throat Chop, but since it's a Generation 1 Pokemon, I think that its move pool deserves to be a little ridiculous. Which isn't not really ridiculous, but I want to give it Poison Jab, I want to give it Mega Horn, because look at that beak, and I want to give it Outrage, which is sort of silly, but it is what it is. I mean, what other Dragon-type move are you going to give to a Flying type? And as far as setup and support, I want to give it Parting Shot in order for it to lower the attack and special attack of Pokemon it might come in on. And with Parting Shot and Intimidate, then it lowers it by, 2 stages. And being that Fearow is already sort of a glass cannon, it's not very defensive, it sort of will function as an offensive pivot. And I think that opening up that role and that niche for it on a team will really see it skyrocket in use. Base 111 speed, outspeeding base 110 Pokemon. Only 99 attack, so it's still able to, pick things off. Revenge kill. It can't kill anything that, like really good walls, but it being able to hit harder and hit faster, as well as pivot out of things that it doesn't necessarily want to be in on, is really, really good for Fearow. And I think that that's what it needs in order to find any sort of usage in the current metagame. Now, I put some glasses on because, one, I want to protect my eyes, and two, I want to make it look like I recorded this on a different day than the previous episode. I hope you're tricked. I mean, now you're not, but maybe you are. Oh man, Arbok 2 Generation 1 really needs some serious improvements, huh? So I think Arbok's move pool is actually pretty decent, and I think it functions pretty okay as a defensive poison type. It's got access to Glare, and it's got access to Stockpile, but what really holds it back in general to me is its stat distribution and its stat spread. It's got base 448, which is like, it's not bad, but again, nothing is really stand out from Arbok. Its best stat is its attack stat. It's got base 95, which is actually decent, and the pure poison typing doesn't really do it any favors either. So for Arbok, I want to give him an additional dark typing. Yes, last time we didn't have any Pokemon that I changed their typing. This time we're starting off right off the bat with 2. It's pretty rare for me to do it, but I think that in certain scenarios they need it. Fearow, normal flying to flying. Arbok, poison to poison dark. I think this makes perfect sense. It is a cobra. It's got a super scary face on its chest, on its stomach, or flaps, or whatever the heck you want to call it. And you look at something like Drapion or Skuntank, and that dark typing actually really goes a long way, or even Alolan Muck. That dark typing goes a really long way to have them function more as like a defensive utility Pokemon, which is what I think that Arbok is sort of, that's sort of what Arbok is good at with its access to Glare and ability to sort of set up coils or stockpiles. So, again, it's all about improving what a Pokemon can already do and giving them better tools and better stats in order for them to function better in what they want to do. And speaking of better tools and better stats, so I want to give it 15 into its HP stat, I want to give it 20 into its defense stat, and I want to give it 20 more into its special defense stat. Now, putting that at a total of 503. 503 isn't crazy, nothing special, still nothing over 100. Special defense is just at the tip, almost at over 100, but it's not. 75.99 actually makes Arbok pretty able to use an Assault Vest. It doesn't have any sort of reliable recovery, and I'm not going to give it any reliable recovery. As far as its abilities, Intimidate, obviously, very, very good. It's always had Intimidate. One of the first users of Intimidate. It had it all the way back in Generation 3. Shed Skin, totally thematic. It's a Cobra. It sheds its skin. It gets rid of poison. And I think, or not, excuse me, it doesn't get rid of poison. Poison types can't be poisoned. It gets rid of like a burn, a paralyze, and sleep. Or freeze. I don't discount freeze as a status. But it's few and far between. But, as you can see, I want to get rid of Unnerve for Corrosion. I think Unnerve is a pretty underwhelming ability. So a lot of the times when I'm thinking about what kind of abilities and things that I want to give a Pokemon, I'm thinking about their Pokédex entries, I'm thinking about what they can do, but I'm also taking inspiration from what they're based on. Now, Arbok is very clearly based on a Cobra. I mean, you know, backwards, whatever. And Cobras have a certain very, very powerful venom. And I thought that Corrosion very thematically fits with an Arbok. Not only its stat spread, but also sort of what it wants to do. It wants to wear Pokemon down. It wants to set up a little bit. It wants to be in the opponent's way. Paralyzing, poisoning, that kind of thing. It can do that better with the Dark type. It can do that better with the defensive stats. And in addition, I want to give it the moves Toxic Spikes, Venom Drench, and Baneful Bunker. I think all of these fit. Having Arbok be a Toxic Spike setter puts it in the same area as Drapion. Doesn't hit as hard as Drapion. It's a little bit bulkier. It's not as fast, I don't believe. Drapion's probably... I think it's faster. Drapion's actually pretty fast. Toxic Spikes, you know, it's as one setter. Venom Drench, it lowers the... Oh, man. Attack, defense, and something. Speed? Nah, I don't know what Venom Drench does. I have to look it up. Hold on. It's 3 stats. Okay, it's the Venom Drench lowers the attack, special attack, and speed stats of all poison targets by 1, which I think goes very, very nicely with Corrosion. It's just another little move in Arbok's arsenal. It doesn't necessarily need to use it. And then lastly, and this is another Gen 7 exclusive, Baneful Bunker was signature move of Toxapex. I'm going to be more widely distributing it. Not like crazy wide, but I think that, you know, Cobras, they form that sort of circle, they sort of get down low, and I think that being able to protect itself as it sets up, you know, coils, or if it sets up stockpiles or anything like that, being able to passively poison opposing Pokemon is a super, super cool thing for Arbok to do. And that about does it for Arbok. I think that Arbok functions pretty good now with its Poison Dark typing as a utility mon. It's able to spread status, it can set up, and it can sort of capitalize on, you know, that on poison, on being able to poison everything, on potentially lowering stats, on Toxic Spikes, and I think that that sort of play style really suits it as a Poison Dark Cobra. Now let's talk about the Raichus. They're by no means bad, especially with the base 110 speed tier that they're both gifted with, but usually Alolan Raichu outshines its original Generation 1 cousin. So we're not going to really touch Alolan Raichu that much. We're going to make it a little bit better, but for now I want to focus on regular Raichu. Now, regular Raichu has always had to live in the shadow of its younger self, being Pikachu, and I think it finds itself constantly in competition with it. I remember watching a short when I was very young. You know, Raichu and Pikachu, they're cheek to cheek and they're running down some hill thing. It was very, very cool. It was Pikachu's Vacation. Look it up if you haven't seen it. I think it's pretty funny. But anyway, so I think that it makes sense to give Raichu the ability, the third ability of Competitive. Now, what Competitive does is when its stats are lowered, it boosts its special attack by 2. So that means that if Raichu is parting shotted, or if it's intimidated, or if it comes in on sticky webs, or that means that, you know, Raichu is now going to be at +2. And that's pretty good. I think that's really, really good for an electric type, and I think that's something that hasn't really been seen. But Raichu, again, I mentioned that it finds itself in the shadow of Alolan Raichu, and to offset that, I want to give Raichu 10 points into its special attack and 10 points into its speed. I don't want to change its base stat total at all, though, so I'm going to take 20 points out of its regular attack, and it's going to still stay at 485. Now, this we'll get to, you know, the reason why this is pretty important when we talk about Alolan Raichu. But base 120 speed is very, very fast. As it's competing with other electric types off the top of my head that are very good, I think of Zorora, I think of Raikou, Zapdos, although Zapdos is already slower than Raichu, but all of them, they hit fast and they hit hard, and Raichu doesn't hit as fast or as hard, but now it's faster, so there's a reason to use it over those much better, bulkier, more, well, frankly, just better Pokemon. So, in addition to Raichu's current moveset, I want to give it Dazzling Gleam, and I want to give it Flash Cannon. I think this makes sense. They're both light-based moves, and Raichu, obviously, it's an electric type. It shines bright. It does the thing. And I think it goes really, really well with competitive, and having access to something that can hurt fairy types sort of re-solidifies its niche as electric type. As, you know, an electric type that's able to hit fairy types, that's pretty rare. I think of Magneton, I think of Magnezone, I think of Togedemaru, Toxtricity. Yeah. But that's all we're going to do with Raichu. Anyway, it already gets access to Nasty Plot too. So, you know, even if it's not running competitive, I want to keep Static, and I want to keep Lightning Rod. Lightning Rod boosts its special attack when it gets hit by an electric type move by 1, and Static finds its uses. It's not very good, especially considering Raichu isn't very defensive, but I think that those 3 abilities round it out to be a pretty decent Pokemon. Alright, so let's talk Alolan Raichu in comparison to its brother. Now, Alolan Raichu has always been a little bit more specially oriented, and I sort of want to exacerbate it. I'm going to take 15 points away from its attack, putting it at base 70 along with regular Raichu, but I'm going to put it all into its special attack. So now it has 110 special attack. I'm not going to touch its speed, so it's going to stay at 110 base speed, and I'm going to give it Static, and I'm going to give it competitive. I'm going to opt to keep Lightning Rod, which is an interaction with electric type, only on Raichu, because Alolan Raichu already has Surge Surfer. It's already its, you know, signature ability. Yeah, so then if you want to use an electric terrain team, you know, you go for Alolan Raichu. If you want a faster speed tier, you go for regular Raichu. If you want a psychic typing, you go for Alolan Raichu. If you want to absorb electric type moves for whatever reason, you go regular Raichu. So now there is a disconnect between those two, and now it's not solely Alolan Raichu is better regular Raichu. As far as its moves go, I am going to give it Dazzling Gleam and Flash Cannon as well. I gave those to Raichu. I expressed the reasoning for that. They're light-based attacks. And another light-based attack is Luster Purge. Now, Luster Purge is a base 70 power psychic-type move that previously was exclusive to Latios. And basically, it has a 50% chance of lowering the special defense of the opposing Pokemon when it's used. Now, would you ever really run it over Psyshock or Psychic? Probably not, but it's there, it's light, it's a Psychic type, it fits Alolan Raichu really, really well, and I think that it just sort of makes sense. Gives it another stab option. If you want to wear down an opposing Pokemon, you could do that with special defense drops. And in addition to those 3 moves, I want to give it Flip Turn. Now, you're like, Flip Turn? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it makes a little bit of sense. I mean, Alolan Raichu's on a surfboard, right? Like, that's his tail. I think it makes sense to be able to sort of flip turn back. It's thematic. It works. I'm there with it. And it gives Alolan Raichu another option to sort of pivot around its threats. Hits ground types, hits rock types. It can outspeed them. So now ground and rock types don't necessarily, or rather mostly just ground. Ground types don't necessarily want to come in and stop Alolan Raichu, especially defensive ground types anyway. And then it can just sort of pivot out of them, which I think makes Alolan Raichu just a little bit better, while also keeping to its theme of being a surfer dude. And that about does it for Alolan Raichu. I had to redo that like 3 times, man. I did it. I had regular Raichu up, and then I messed up what Luster Purge did, and I was like, I don't know. But it doesn't even matter. On to the Sandslashes. A lot of Alolan forms this time, which is totally fine by me. Let's talk Sandslash. Oh boy, another Generation 1 Syndrome Pokemon. Now, first glance at Sandslash, first thing you notice is its bad special defense. 55 special defense, it's bad speed, 65 speed, it's less than great HP, being 75, and it's relatively useless as abilities in Sand Veil and Sand Rush. Now, these are useless for entirely different reasons. Sand Veil is a accuracy lowering ability when Sandstorm is up, so it makes it harder for opposing Pokemon to hit Sandslash when Sandstorm is up. Now, this ability is banned in conjunction with Sandstorm. Anything that lowers accuracy of opposing Pokemon, for the most part, most of the time, it's banned. And Sand Rush, now, Sandslash's main, most notable competition is Excadrill. And Excadrill is, you ready? It's got better HP, it's got better attack, it's got better speed, it's got Sand Rush, and on top of all of that, it has a Steel typing, and it also has access to Rocks, and it also has access to Rapid Spin. So Excadrill is literally like, it's like Sandslash on steroids. So we have to do something to Sandslash in order to carve out a better niche for it as compared to its ground type counterparts. You know, it's not the best hazard setter, it's not the best spinner. It's not even close to the best defensive wall. So in order to make Sandslash better at what it does, we need to boost its stats accordingly. Now, first thing I want to do is I want to give it 10 points into its defense. This makes it, you know, a little bit bulkier on the physical side. It didn't necessarily need it, but it definitely appreciates it. Being able to eat more physical hits while not having any sort of reliable recovery definitely helps it out a lot. In accordance with Alolan Sandslash, I'm going to take 20 points from its special attack, and I'm going to put it directly into its special defense, putting it at base 75 special defense. So now its defensive profile is 75, 120, 75, which is much, much better than 75, 110, 55. And lastly, I'm going to put 15 points into its speed, putting it at a pretty average, slightly above average base 80. This makes Sandslash a little bit better. Now he's able to take a special hit. He didn't really need the special attack at all. It was never going to run a special attacking move. And I'm not scared of putting it that low because Alolan Sandslash has it that low. Base 80 speed, now 65 speed after a rapid spin and +1 speed is not nearly as good as 80 base speed after a rapid spin. This means that Sandslash is going to definitely be outspeeding certain threats after a rapid spin, after clearing away hazards, you name it. Now, the thing you might notice now that it's on screen, are the ability changes. Sand Veil, as I mentioned, wasn't doing anything for it, and I didn't really like it that much. So you look at Sandslash, and what are its two most notable features? Well, its claws and its rough skin. So I think it makes sense to give Sandslash Tough Claws, and I also think it makes sense to give Sandslash Rough Skin. Now, this lets Sandslash do a number of things. Tough Claws, Rapid Spin, it can now function a little bit more offensively if it wants to. A Rough Skin Rocky Helmet build is pretty viable at this point. Think of it like a Druddigon, a ground-type Druddigon with no way to... oh my god, what? Phase? No, I got the word. I was thinking like Dragon Tail. No way to phase Pokemon out, but it has hazard removal. And again, 80 base speed is actually pretty solid. In addition to these abilities, I want to give regular Sandslash access to Needle Arm, which helps it deal with bulky water types a little bit better. It's boosted by Tough Claws, and I think it just makes perfect sense thematically. Quite literally, Sandslash has, like Needle Claws. And I want to give it Sucker Punch as well, since the Pokédex entry references how it, attacks its prey. And as far as setup and support, another thing I think that makes sense is Sandslash is based on a shrew, but it's also based sort of around an armadillo. And now armadillos, obviously, they ball up and they form a shield. And I think Spiky Shield makes a lot of sense for Sandslash. Spiky Shield itself, if you don't know what it does, it was previously exclusive to Chestnut. Now it's not, I believe. I think it's a part of a couple other Pokemon's kits, maybe just Cacturn off the top of my head. But basically, it works in the same way. It's Protect, except if a Pokemon hits it physically, they'll take, I think, 1/8 of their HP in damage. Combine this with a Rough Skin Rocky Helmet build. Sandslash already has access to Spikes. As of Generation 8, it's got access to Stealth Rock. Now with the Rapid Spin being buffed, and getting these stat buffs and ability buffs, I think that this makes Sandslash, while still not as good as, say, Excadrill, because Excadrill, it just has the typing, it's got the attack, it's got Sand Rush, it's overall better. It's still overall better. But now Sandslash has a little more defined niche as a rough skin Rocky Helmet user who can set up hazards, who can get rid of hazards, and who can take even more damage than regular Excadrill, albeit passively because of Spiky Shield. And I think that all of this fits thematically with what Sandslash is as a Pokemon. Now on to the Icy Brethren of Sandslash, regular Cantonian Sandslash. It is Alolan Sandslash. Now, Alolan Sandslash is a little bit better than regular Sandslash already. This is because Ice Steel is, while it's sort of a flawed typing in the sense that it's 4 times weak to fire, 4 times weak to fighting, it's a little bit better offensively. The ability Slush Rush, having it so sparsely distributed, actually helps it out a lot here too. It's a rapid spinner, and it also gets Aurora Veil, so it can function alongside a Snow Warning setter, such as like Aurorus, and it can set up Aurora Veil for its team, but that's like a really small niche that it has. But so even though I think Alolan Sandslash is better than Sandslash, I think that it still probably warrants some changes. Now, so let's talk right off the bat about its abilities. Now, Snowcloak is the same thing as Sand Veil. It increases its evasion in Hail as compared to increasing it in Sand. I think this ability is kind of cheap, and while it sort of thematically makes sense, I think it also makes sense to give Alolan Sandslash Tough Claws as well. I gave it to regular Sandslash, and I don't think that Tough Claws necessarily makes Alolan Sandslash any sort of broken. And another thing you got to keep in mind is you can't run Tough Claws and Slush Rush at the same time. You have to choose one or the other. You can either go fast in Hail, or you can hit hard outside of Hail. It's totally a catch-22. Which one do you want to do? I don't know. Build your team around it. And lastly, because I think all Pokemon should have 3 abilities, I want to give Alolan Sandslash Refrigerate. Now, this makes sense. Refrigerate is an ability that was previously exclusive to Aurorus. It was on Mega Glalie for an amount of time, but keep in mind, again, this is a meta without Megas, no Z-moves, no Gigantamaxing, no Dynamaxing. And without Mega Glalie, that means that there is no physical Ice type with Refrigerate, and I sort of want to fix that because Sandslash, in its Pokédex entries, it says that it coats its claws in ice. It's known for making things, that are normal colder, so I think that Refrigerate actually really helps it. It boosts its Ice-type attacks, and yeah, so I think it just totally thematically fits. I think Tough Claws thematically fits too, and that gives it 3 very good abilities to choose from. In the same essence of regular Sandslash, it has 120 defense, 25 special attack, not changing that. It's slightly lower SPDEF. I gave regular Sandslash 20 more into its SPDEF, and Alolan Sandslash only has 65 instead of 75. But as a trade-off, I'm giving Alolan Sandslash 10 points into attack and the same 15 points into speed. So now Alolan Sandslash hits harder, and it's equally as fast as its ground-type brethren. I think that this makes Alolan Sandslash actually pretty decent. Again, 80 base speed after a Rapid Spin boost is much better. After a +1 is much better than 65 after a +1, and being able to hit a little bit harder on top of being boosted by Tough Claws, on top of potentially being boosted by Refrigerate, and in Hail if you're running Slush Rush, it's going to hit a little bit harder, and it's going to be able to do the damage a little bit more, making it more viable on a team. So as far as moves go, I want to give Alolan Sandslash, I want to give it Ice Shard, and I want to give it Spiky Shield. Now, I'm opting not to give it Needle Arm, and I'm opting not to give it Sucker Punch. Now, it already gets a form of Stab, or it already gets a form of priority in Ice Shard now, which I was actually very surprised that it didn't get earlier. Alolan Ninetales gets Ice Shard, but it's faster than than Alolan Sandslash, like very much faster. So Alolan Sandslash actually needs it a little bit more. And I also want to give it Spiky Shield in the same essence. It's very clearly an armadillo. It can clearly roll up into a ball and be spiky and do damage. And while it can't do it in the same sense that regular Sandslash can do with Rocky Helmet and Rough Skin, it can't compound on itself. It in itself is a pretty good move, and I think it deserves access to it. Now, I'm not going to give it Needle Arm, and I'm not going to give it Sucker Punch. It already has a form of priority with its newly acquired Ice Shard. And Needle Arm, I don't think it necessarily needs it, or rather doesn't really make sense. I mean, it is an Ice Steel type. Now you might think, oh, the Sandslash doesn't really make sense either. I think Sandslash needs the help against Water type more than Alolan Sandslash does. And that about does it for this section of rebalancing Pokemon. Yeah, it's very fun to try to separate the regular forms from the Alola forms. We saw 2 of that today with the Raichus and the Sandslashes. I really, if you guys have any questions about what I did, if you guys have your own ideas, be sure to let me know in the comments. I love doing this. I love propagating discussion and, talking about what could be done to potentially make these Pokemon better. If you enjoyed the video and you're enjoying the series so far, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, more stuff like this. If you have any suggestions for the format of how I do this as well, I mean, there's so many more videos to do. So, shoot me a comment or something. Be like, hey, I think it would be cool if you included this, or this would be, nice. It's all about, it's all about the viewers. It's all about what people want to see. So, thank you all for watching. I'm going to get on out of here. Till next time.